Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Kent County Board of Commissioners meeting. Today's date is Thursday, November 8th, 2018. The time is 8:30 a.m. We'll begin today with roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners Womack.
Present.
Voorhees.
Present.
Vonk.
Here.
Talon.
Here.
Steck.
Here.
Skaggs.
Here.
Ponstein.
Here.
Morgan. Melton. Here. Mast.
Here.
Korndike.
Present.
Kallman.
Here.
Jones. Hennessy.
Here.
Bulkowski.
Present.
Breeby.
Here.
Vice Chair Bolter.
Here.
Commissioner Antor.
Here.
Chair Salfeld.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 17 members present, 2 absent. You have a quorum.
Very good. I will then call on Commissioner Melton to lead us in an invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pull it. You can pull it.
Okay, I had something on it. Good morning. With Veterans Day being on Sunday, and this morning we will be honoring our county's Veteran of the Year, I thought I would share a couple facts about Veterans Day. And it may be definitely a refresher course for some of you, and for some it may be new. It was first called Armistice Day, recognized by President Wilson November 11, 1919. It marked the armistice signed between the Allies and Germany ending World War I. It was changed to Veterans Day in 1954 when Eisenhower was president because it was felt it would better honor all veterans and military personnel who served the United States in all wars, particularly those living veterans. It didn't become a national holiday until 1967 when Lyndon Johnson was then president. As a tribute to our veterans, some on the board, I worked to try and find words, and sometimes someone else's words are just better than what you can come up with yourself. Veterans Day is all about honor. It's all about serving your country so everyone here can be free. Veterans Day is all about valor. It's all about laying your life on the line to protect liberty. We raise our flag to you, the red, the white, and blue. Veterans Day is all about courage. It's all about respecting the right of each one to live without fear. And Veterans Day is all about heroes, the ones who stand up each day to defend the hope of us all. We raise our flag to you, the red, the white, and blue. And we say thank you, thank you, thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Melton, for those words. We will move to our next item on the agenda, which is agenda item number 5, special order of business. We're going to begin with the Veteran of the Year. And for that, I'm going to turn this over to Commissioner Mast, a veteran. You were in the Air Force, right? Yeah, Navy, I'm sorry, okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to be able to start the ceremony. Betsy Melton is going to be given the proclamation. But the Veteran of the Year has been recognized by this board for the last couple of years, and I'm pleased that we've got a pretty good contingency of the veterans here, including the United Veterans of Kent County Commander, Captain Paul Ryan, and other officers within that organization. Paul is called Commander of the Veterans Council, but he is a captain in the U.S. Navy. So, and we recognize a veteran who was selected by a special group of people, some community members, some members from the Veterans Council, And this morning's recipient is a person who's well-deserved. Betsy Melton is on that committee, represented as a community member. Betsy is probably, as I've come to realize, although she's not a veteran, she probably has the most respect for veteran of anybody of our board because she lost a brother, I think, Betsy, and I'm sure that's tough for you to even contemplate, in the Vietnam War. I've had conversations with her, and it's a very moving story. So, Betsy, I think I'm going to turn it over to you to do the proclamation and to introduce our Veteran of the Year. Thank you. Thank you, Betsy.
Imagine it was a very emotional time when I was trying to put together my invocation and now this. I am wondering if Robert J. Anderson would please join me. Lieutenant Robert J. Anderson. I have to say, as I read through this and read through all of the others, I'm just a little short note and did this last year. There's sometimes in life where you are called to do something, and this is one of those where I feel very unworthy to be giving anything to this gentleman, given his history and all that he has had, that he has done for us and still continues to do. So it is tremendously an honor to be able to do this for you. Proclamation by the Kent County Board of Commissioners. Whereas our nation sets aside November 11th each year to honor and recognize veterans who have served in our nation's armed forces. And whereas the United Veterans Council of Kent County annually selects a Veteran of the Year and gives this veteran special recognition at the Council's annual banquet. And whereas the 2018 Veteran of the Year is Robert J. Anderson, an Army 1st Cavalry Division veteran who served in Vietnam and Cambodia from 1969 to 1970, receiving numerous medals for exemplary service, including a Purple Heart, and honorably discharged as a first lieutenant. And whereas Robert Anderson has continued service to his fellow 1st Cavalry members since active duty, has served as a volunteer with the Kent County Veterans Honor Guard with over 800 veteran funeral participations in the past 4 years and helped with several leadership positions. And I missed a part, so excuse me, I'm going back. Whereas Robert Anderson has continued service to his fellow 1st Cavalry veterans since active duty discharge by performing leadership duties in the 1st Cavalry Division Association and visited fellow 1st Cavalry veterans hospitalized at Walter Reed Hospital in Washington. Whereas Robert Anderson serves as an advocate for all veterans by making trips to Washington for numerous memorial events and assisting local veterans with benefit issues and assuring appropriate awards for service that services are obtained. And whereas Robert Anderson is an example of a veteran caring for veterans who can't care for themselves, it is doubtful that he can say no to anyone needing help, especially veterans. And whereas Robert Anderson also has participated in neighborhood environmental and safety issues and has volunteered for the Handicapped Enforcement Patrol program of the Kent County Sheriff's Office. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Board Chair James Salfeld, Commissioners Harold Mast and Betsy Melton, on behalf of the Kent County Board of Commissioners, do hereby congratulate Robert J. Anderson, a member of the 1st Cavalry Division Association and the Kent County Veterans Honor Guard, for being selected the 2018 Veteran of the Year, and thank him for his many years of service to the military and veteran service members of our community. And we make this proclamation on this day of 8 November 2018. know this is probably not normally done, but if we sit down and let those who have served stand, please, that would be you, Commissioner Mast, and Commissioner Vaughn, and whomever else. I would ask, please, that we just recognize these incredible individuals by just giving them our thanks.
Thank you, and great honor, well-deserved. Thank you so much for your service over the years. We're going to move next to agenda item 5B, which is our 2019 budget presentation, followed with the public hearing. So we'll turn it over to Administrator Britt at this time.
Good morning, Commissioners. Glad to be here this morning. We're going to take you through the 2000 budget presentation that we will be approving at the end of the month, hopefully. This budget demonstrates the county's commitment to fiscal responsibility and the provision of services necessary to enhance the quality of life for all of our residents, no matter the circumstances. The social services budget, $84.6 million, promotes self-reliance and safeguards the physical, emotional, and well-being of county residents by influencing policies, providing education programs and services, and responding to the needs of vulnerable populations. And so we'll move on. Sorry about that. So the social services budget again has $84.6 million. 26.4 million is for health services. 28.9 million is for child care services, and 11.6 million is for senior services. The recreation budget, which supports the quality of life of the county, has $20.9 million. This is for recreation spaces for citizens to gather for public and private events. This includes weddings, company picnics, family reunions, nonprofit fundraisers, and a wide range of other special events that bring our community together. The Parks Department is a part of that budget. $10.3 million is allocated to the parks. $5 million is dedicated to the public museum. And the zoo receives $5.6 million, which a portion of that is through the capital improvement plan, $0.6 million. The budget also provides $46 million for the judicial budget. This portion of the budget administers justice fairly according to existing laws and operates in an efficient and effective manner. It hears civil, criminal, and appeals, probate, and traffic cases, and handles dissident estates, guardianships, and conservatorships, mental health, and trust matters, and seeks justice for all victims in crime and children in need. Within the judicial budget, the courts received $26.3 million. The friend of the court receives $10.4 million, and the prosecutor receives $9.3 million. Within the court's budget includes circuit court as well as the district court. Public safety is one of the larger budgets. Our Sheriff's Department is included in that budget. $90.5 million is included in that budget, and what it does is preserves and protects the safety and security of county residents. Provides criminal and civil enforcement, maintains a communication center to facilitate emergency call answering, and provides a safe and secure correctional facility. Again, the Sheriff's Department receives the largest share, $87.6 million. The Animal Shelter receives $2.2 million. And the Fire Commission receives $0.7 million. Public Works. Another important aspect of the budget is $47.1 million. This budget delivers stormwater drainage, solid waste, and recycling service to county residents in a manner that conserves natural resources and promotes healthy, vibrant, and safe communities. Within this budget, the Department of Public Works is a big portion of this budget, of course, and $46.4 million is allocated to support that effort. The Drain Commissioner receives, or the Drain Commission receives $0.7 million of that budget. And of course, it delivers the improvements to the drains and of course, public safety and so forth. On this side, we get to talk about how the budget is allocated into functional areas. You see those here. It's very important to realize this budget is a large budget. Again, it is $378.4 million with the exclusion of transfers in and out. The net of that total budget is $378.2 million. The general fund portion is $179.7 million. Another important fact that you should be aware of course, is the fact that we have now 1,774 employees within that budget, full-time equivalent employees. On the horizon, as you all know, we're always constantly aware of the fact that the state may change its rules related to revenue sharing. So it's important for us to stay vigilant on that part. There's about $12 million that we received from the state related to that fund, and I want to make sure that staff, we stay ahead of that. The other issue that you're all aware of is the Headley Amendment and how that reduces our ability to retain what we would typically receive from property tax revenue. So that's another important thing we've got to watch. We were affected by it in some of the auxiliary millages last year. We're also, of course, working on our IT, our information technology and infrastructure analysis. You'll be hearing more about that in 2019. There will be decisions made, and we've talked about the capital improvement plan and how we want to be able to secure dollars from those dollars that we set aside to help that. We also have to be aware of the fact that our courts and our judgeships, there will be probably a need to take a look at those, and there may be a need to add a judge or two in the future. Don't know. We'll see how that works with scale, but that's coming up. The other thing that we've got to be cognizant of is the fact that there are other competing demands that we receive from the community as a whole. Working with the City of Grand Rapids, our larger partner that's in the area, and things that we'd like to do for the core community. Very important that we keep that in mind. We have a number of issues that we'll be talking about after this budget is done, related to, again, the infrastructure improvements that we'd like to make in the future as well. So we have to keep those out in front of us as we deal with this budget. The County Commission will be asked to adopt the budget on Thursday, November 29th at 8:30 in this room. The proposed budget will also be available at accesskent.com for viewing by the public as well. And I just want to say thank you to the board for your support. We've had 4 work sessions. Chair Finance, Diane Jones, worked with you all to get through all of your questions. I hope that your questions were answered. And we look forward to working with you again. I want to acknowledge the operating budget review team that worked with the departments, and I want to thank all the departments that helped to provide input into this budget. It was a team effort. I want to give a special thank you to Marvin Van Nortwood, the award center, helped to put all this together. So we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have at this time.
Well, actually, I think the way it works is the commission will address questions when on the 29th, when it comes before the board. So, and just as a matter of background, the Finance Committee has met, as you noted, through numerous work sessions and in its formal session, and approved a budget to recommend to the board that will be taken up on the 29th by this board as a whole. At that time, the commissioners will be able to make any final comments or ask any final questions at that time. So what we have now is a public hearing on the budget. So I'm going to declare the public hearing open. This is an opportunity for someone to comment on the budget. I want to make it clear, though, this is not the public comment section. That's coming up in agenda item number 6. So this public hearing is only as it relates to the budget itself. We will follow the same general rules we follow for normal public comment. So is there anybody that wants to comment on the budget today? Come forward and state your name, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Kevin Portinga. I just have a quick question. What's the rationale behind having the largest portion of the budget go towards Kent County Security Services?
Yeah, this is not a question and answer time. This is just a time to make a comment. So if you have a comment on it, that's fine.
My comment is that it doesn't seem quite clear to me why we would spend so much on security services, spend the largest portion of it on security services, as opposed to numerous other things we could spend that budget on. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Any other comments on the budget? I'm not seeing any, so we, oh, okay, come on up.
I just think that it's kind of ridiculous that we're spending millions and millions of dollars to lock up nonviolent offenders when we have people who are freezing and sleeping on the streets right now. It's your guys' job to make sure that everybody has adequate housing, and they don't all want to live in the jail. Thanks.
Thank you. Oh, well, that's fine. Let's put that next to it. Okay, I don't see any other public comment on the budget, so we'll close that public hearing and move to our next agenda item, which is 5C, and that is an update from John Ball Zoo. And I believe we will be hearing from Peter D. Arinzio. Did I get it right? Close enough?
Okay.
All right. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for having me. Today, I'd like to provide an overview of what we do. And I know I've talked about some of this in the past, but when we're out in the community speaking, or we're out in the community fundraising, we always get a lot of questions about what we do. And then I'd like to give a teaser about some of the things that we're planning next. What's most valuable to me, though, is your questions. So I'm hoping you feel comfortable asking questions, and we should plan some type of tour out at the zoo sometime. So I'd like to talk about a few things for our overview: location, size, our attendance, fundraising, our role in the community, and our core values. And I'll go much deeper in our core values because it expresses how we execute our mission. Size-wise, I know there's a perception out there sometimes that we're a small zoo. We're not. We're also in the perfect location. We're part of the city. We're part of the community, being less than 2 miles from Rosa Parks Circle. We have over 100 acres. That puts us, as zoos go, on the large size. The current zoo is 31 acres, where you walk through the zoo. And there are many zoos that are half our size that do more than double our annual attendance. So the size of our zoo is not a barrier. It's getting people to the zoo that can be challenging. City streets, highways, and parking. Our attendance, I always like to talk about an average, because you can have a good year, you can have a bad year. So a lot of the data I'm going to present is a 3-year running average. On average, we serve over 500,000 guests to the zoo each year. Last year was an actual record year, 543,000. In addition to those 500,000 guests, about 200,000 people visit the park out front every year. Also, less than 40% of our attendance comes from Kent County. Our attendance comes from all 83 counties in Michigan, and this year from all 50 states. I don't know who came from Alaska. It was 5 people, but we're very happy they came to visit us. My point, though, is that the John Ball Zoo brings tourism to Grand Rapids, and I love sharing this little tidbit too. More people go to zoos each year in the United States than the combined attendance of professional football, baseball, basketball, and hockey. I also know from our operating agreement with the county that fundraising is always a question, and what are we doing for fundraising? How are we growing our fundraising capacity? We have shown growth. Out of our budget in 2018, we're looking at $2.1 million in fundraising, and this is operational fundraising. It does not include capital fundraising. As many of you know, if we're going to build new habitats, build new exhibits, build improvements to the zoo that are capital in nature, we 100% fundraise for those. Our operating budget only covers our cost of operations. The animal care plus the facilities team to maintain the animals, including utilities, is about $5.5 million per year, with about $95 million of assets to rebuild the zoo. We spend about $3.3 million a year on ongoing maintenance, and then we have about $10 million of critical deferred maintenance. So all that together is close to $10 million. We use operational fundraising to help fuel our budget, but we do capital fundraising for new habitats. So our role in the community. Zoos play many roles in the community. We're all about family quality time, community recreation, tourism that I talked about before, economic engine, regional business attractor. I know one of the questions on the Amazon application was to talk about what zoo you have in the area. People want to move their families where there are strong zoos. We're also an AZA accredited institution, which I'll talk about a little bit later what that means, but it means we provide science leadership, but we're also part of the community. We do outreach, we partner with other community organizations. Many places do these things, many great institutions in West Michigan. What makes us a little bit different is our why. We're focused on wildlife and the natural environment, and how we do that is through our core values: conservation, education, community, and celebrate. So again, we're an AZA accredited zoo, Association of Zoos and Aquariums. Less than 10% of the zoos achieve that highest standard. We've held it longer than any other zoo in the state of Michigan at 35 years, and we've never lost our accreditation. What does that mean? It means we're science-based. It means our keepers have science degrees. We have team members with bachelor's, master's, and doctorate degrees. We're under pressure to research, publish, and go through peer review. We're also focused on saving animals from extinction. We participate in 40 species survival plans. We provide scientific leadership on 39 taxon advisory groups. We also participate in field conservation right here in our state and around the world. In the state of Michigan, we focus on 5 endangered species. We've sent team members out to prevent poaching on patrol and stuff like that. So it's really exciting work. We're also committed to focusing more than half of our conservation efforts in the Great Lakes region. In the next year, we've set aside $140,000 in direct spending on our conservation efforts. Our education programs fill a 20-page 9x12 brochure, and it's a wide range of programs, from one-hour programs of class instruction to a full week to camps. And just by the numbers, some of our programs, on average, we have 810 different programs per year, types of programs. We serve 49,000, almost 50,000 students, plus almost 11,000 adults. We have 114,000 student contact hours. And part of our promise with the millage, which was high-quality animal care, addressing deferred maintenance, and free K-12 school groups to the zoo, we serve 16,400 Kent County students. Due to our strong science-based programs, the zoo provides state-approved, state continuing education clock hours for teacher professional development. We meet STEM requirements, we exceed STEM requirements, and again, it's all science-based, which is a great opportunity for teachers to meet their professional development hours. Community. Part of the community is our team. We have 225 full-time equivalents. At Peak Staffing over the summer, we have 281 team members. During the winter, we dropped down for about 2 months to 91. We have over 400 volunteers with over 200 volunteers volunteering weekly. Zoos are also the community. They serve a diverse audience. We have a diverse workforce. Despite the low turnover, which is a good thing to have for an organization, we've almost doubled our diversity numbers. Zoos are also economic drivers. Based on a GVSU economic impact study, our direct economic impact is $40 million per year. In addition, 67% of all spending by non-Kent County residents. So zoos create new wealth and economic activity versus trading wealth within the county, because they're coming from outside the county. Also part of the community is zoos must be accessible to serve its entire community. We're a hillside zoo, and being a hillside zoo, that presents challenges, but we're committed to being universally accessible. We've expanded dramatically our pathways, and on a little side note, when I say hillside zoo, Cheyenne Mountain Zoo has less of a topography height difference than we do. So, which makes the zoo beautiful. But some of the examples of what we've done is the Waterfall Boardwalk Trail, the Upper Valley Pathway, which we completed this year, and coming soon is the Entry Valley, which I'll talk about in our master plan. But we're readdressing the main pathway into the zoo to make that universally accessible. We also have many community engagement programs, from workforce development, finding community members with special needs to develop their job skills, mentoring and finding work for unstable home youth development, internships, and many more. Last year, we partnered with many community organizations on the West Side Cleanup. We more than doubled our turnout for the West Side Cleanup. The West Side Collaborative has been a great team member on trying to bring all these organizations together to do more with less. Our JUMP program is another amazing program to make sure the zoo is accessible to all. Our 3-year average is 34,000 children and their families. And to qualify for that program, you must be on a free or reduced school lunch. And what that program is yourself plus up to 4 people, 5 people in total, can come out to the zoo for free. And they also receive free bus transportation within the county as well to get to the zoo. So, earlier I talked about what do zoos do for a community, and I talked about family. Based on a service management group out of Kansas City, Guest Intercepts, the #1 reason why people come to the zoo is to spend time with friends and family. #1 reason. To see the animals was number 6 on the list. What's the most memorable moment based on an AZA research study? It was a human being. It was a person. It was a volunteer. It was a conversation with a keeper or a family member. So zoos are also all about celebrating. We know how to have fun. We have countless birthdays. We have many weddings in the Bissell Treehouse. We do corporate retreats. We do special events like the Zoo Goes Boo. We have Rendezvous, Rock, Roar, and Pour with live music and craft beer. Party for the Planet, which is conservation, sustainability, environmental celebration, and many more. So what are some things we're doing next? I'd like to break this into 2 sections, the park and the front entry. And we used to have a master plan on our website, and we took it down because we made a lot of changes to the master plan. And one of the things that struck me coming to West Michigan and seeing the master plan, I was concerned about what our front door looked like. And when you drive into the zoo, what the master plan had on it was a lot of parking, a lot of concrete, had a 3-story concrete building right on the pond in the development plans. And that struck me as odd, being a conservation-based organization, and was such an amazing, amazing site, over 100 acres of parkland and woods, that our front door really should be about nature, about setting the tone, about an escape from city life. So but we didn't know what elements we wanted in the master plan, so we formed a steering committee in December 2017 and engaged the community and really just started with a clean slate. What would you like to see in our park? We got a lot of great feedback, and of course we had some people that said go left, some people that said go right, but we worked through it, and I think we got a pretty exciting plan. So again, our objective is to keep our front door looking like a tranquil, naturalistic setting while improving park amenities to serve our neighbors. How did we do this? Again, clean slate, formed a steering committee to guide us, and then we just asked the community what they wanted. That steering committee was made up of Kent County Parks, Kent County Parks Foundation, Grand Rapid Parks, Friends of Grand Rapid Parks, John Ball Area Neighbors, West Side Collaborative, West Fulton Business Association, Sacred Heart Church and Academy, The Other Way Ministries, The Right Place, Veritas Design Group, the architectural firm that does many of the city's parks, and Steve Faber from Byron Fisk. We held several open community meetings, 3 of them. We mailed 4,000 invitations to homes, inviting them directly to come out. Bought 100 boxes of pizza, and we had a lot of fun. And designs were presented to the community, and we went through several design iterations to find the solution that worked for the most people. Entire process took about 7 months, and this is a rendering of what came out of that. We presented several different designs. This is what the majority of the community chose. There's about 19 acres here in this area that is not blocked out, and about 13 acres is usable park space. That other 6 acres is a lot of rain gardens and part of our sustainability plan to address rainwater. It also allows us to exceed DEQ MS4 standards. But we're doing a little different approach to the rain gardens as well. We're calling them gardens because yes, they're areas that hold water, but we're going to plant them with native flowers and butterfly gardens and stuff like that, which allows us to tell a great story. In that space, there's a meditative type sculpture garden. There's a new band shell. There's new playgrounds that are have full universal access. There's hiking trails, bike trails throughout there. Some sports courts. I played 10 years of soccer, so I was really advocating for that, but there wasn't enough support for that, so we got some different courts in there. So it was a lot of fun, and we'll execute this over the next several years as we fundraise. I do know our intent is to start with a playground next year, redoing the playground. And from the front entry, again, we focused on accessibility for all and building capacity. So there are times when from where you purchase your tickets, the line goes all the way to the playground. That's past the parking lot. So we have plenty of space in the zoo. We just don't have the ability to get them through the front door fast enough. So when I talk about capacity, I'm talking about that. Also, there have been times, many of you have probably heard years ago, they actually shut the zoo down because the backlog on the highway was so long on the interstate it caused a safety issue. As you come around that corner on 196, cars were backed up so long to exit that people couldn't see that backlog as they came around. So we have plenty of room inside the zoo. Again, we have 109 acres or 110 acres in total. There's plenty of space. It's just developing that capacity. On the infrastructure side too, the current, actually almost all the infrastructure in the front entry right now and the parking lot was last touched in the late 1950s and early 1960s. The zoo's grown dramatically during that time. So when I talk about infrastructure, it's stormwater, it's natural gas lines, power lines, water lines, in order to be able to service the new habitats that we're building, the new animals that we're bringing in, and stuff like that. So also in 2019, we're going to bring some new animals out. So this year we opened the Upper Valley Trail, and we're going to program that space with a new meerkat and African porcupine exhibit. And we're also adding giant anteaters. We're adding diapers, which is a type of, it looks like a small deer, about this high. We're adding toucans, we're adding an armadillo, and we're actually adding many more. I put "and more" because as an AZA zoo, we don't own any of the animals. So we have to get permission to exchange animals from other zoos, and we're still working out the details. So I want to hold that till I know for sure. And it's actually a fun process. You know, we're focused on saving animals from extinction. Zoos do reintroductions back into the wild, and we're looking for, you move animals around to find a really good genetic match in order to keep that genetic diversity. So if animals go extinct in the wild, we have the last bastion of hope to be able to reintroduce. Beyond 2019, we're going to be bringing pygmy hippos to the zoo, stellar eagles, which is the world's largest fish eagle with a wingspan over 8 feet. They're glacial relics. A new river otter exhibit, and Michigan waterfowl. And I don't have exact dates because it's part of our fundraising strategy and as we go out into the community and fundraise. And I'd be happy to talk to anyone afterwards if you'd like to make a donation. So this is a rough diagram of what the new front entry will look like. And I say rough diagram because we're still working with the architects. But we basically widened the throat, and then we're doing a switchback trail and hugging the hillside to get the proper rise over run. That entire path doesn't exceed 5% of a slope, which means if you have a, like I have 3 kids and one's in college now, but I can remember the day when you have one sitting in the stroller, one's hopping on the back, you got like 50 pounds in diaper bags. It's really hard to push all that up a steep hill. So, all right, I'll turn it over for, hoping you have some exciting questions.
All right, thank you, Peter. Very interesting information there. Any questions, Commissioner Vaughn?
Yes, I had one question, and a question I've asked before. Handicap accessibility, which you sort of just mentioned, but do we have electric scooters available or rented?
We do.
We do?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So we have 2 options. Because it's a hillside zoo, we offer free wheelchairs, but we also have electric scooters available for a rental fee.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and actually we added, because as our attendance has gone up, we needed more, so we added 3 this year to be able to meet demand.
I applaud you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Melton.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple things. The first one, when you talked about the JUMP program and being free for those who are up to 5 persons, et cetera, are all of the schools aware of that?
Yes, we worked with KISD. We also send teams out to the schools. We did do a slightly different approach this year. We were hoping to get a better, so we get mixed results with schools. Some schools embrace it, and they ensure that those passes get to all of the families that meet the requirement. And all schools have great intentions, but it's a mixed bag with the execution. So this year we tried something different. We mailed them directly to homes.
Oh, okay, all right. And kind of piggybacked on that, could you explain to me why, whenever it was that I was a chaperone, it was always rainy and we ended up in the reptile park, which I don't do snakes and spiders. Right, the last thing is just on the same note.
I wish I could control the rain.
It never failed. So I found a picture of my 1st grade class, and we were all sitting on Mr. John Ball's lap.
Oh, that's great.
So I tell you, the zoo, it's a good place, very, very good place, and we're very lucky to have it. Thank you.
Thank you. And the John Ball statue is definitely staying. You can see a little rectangle on that map that shows where it is. Thank you.
Commissioner Korndike.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation and update this morning, Peter. My question has to do with the FTEs. I recall when we had the zoo under the auspices of the county, we had 65 employees when we cut you guys loose in 2013, and now you're up to 225, or maybe even 281. So were we grossly understaffed, or what's the reasoning and the logic behind such a bump up in employees? And if you could help us out with that, I'd appreciate it.
So was 65 the FTE count or the year-round salary? We have a lot of seasonals, but we have grown.
So it's maybe the 91 number we're looking at versus the, I mean.
Yes, although I would imagine, I'm just guessing, but probably the FTE count was probably around 100. So you're correct, we have grown dramatically. And in the last, so the millage gave us an extra $2.5 million a year, which was a huge help. But also our operational budget has grown dramatically by focusing on earned revenue and operational fundraising. We've been able to grow our operational budget by almost $5 million. That allowed us to expand our educational programs. Our educational contact hours have gone through the roof. We're also doing a lot more within the actual community. Also, we had many sites. When I talk about deferred maintenance, when I say critical deferred maintenance, AZA zoos go through an accreditation process every 5 years. And for us to meet the requirements to provide proper food and shelter, high quality medical care, and enrichment, the mental and psychological health of the animals, we had to make a lot of improvements, which means bringing on a lot more maintenance staff, more keepers for operant conditioning, stuff like that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Skaggs.
Thank you, Chair. As you know, there's a bill moving through the legislature on breeding large carnivores.
Yes.
Could you let us all know if that bill were to pass, how would that impact the zoo? What would your plans be then?
Be a great impact on conservation, saving animals from extinction. So we have emerged tigers. There are less than 400 in the wild today. So it's critical that we can continue to breed those. We also have one of the best tiger habitats in the United States. So if we could breed tigers, we would absolutely get a breeding recommendation, which brings baby cubs, which drives economic activity as well. So there'd be a direct impact on economic activity. There'd be a direct impact on conservation. Right now, for those that aren't familiar with the Large Carnivore Act, if it's illegal to breed a feline above 35 pounds. So that affects our snow leopards, affects our lions, and affects our tigers. We're working with the House and the Senate to change that. A bill got through the House, just barely. It did not get to the Senate. Part of the opposition is we're trying to craft the bill in a way that ensures that we protect public safety and that's focused on true conservation, not just I feel like having a tiger because it's a cool thing to have. So there are some people in the state of Michigan that are fighting that because they want the ability to have their own tigers. And we're adamantly against that. The bill that got through the House, we feel very comfortable with the requirements. They mirror AZA requirements. And right now it's in the Senate. We're trying to work through some disagreements on the revised language.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bukowski.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick comment and question. The comment, absolutely. I don't know if folks got to read the post from Curb Free with Corey Lee that Experience Grand Rapids forwarded to us about, it's a guy who travels the world and talks about accessibility. And again, I know from stuff at Disability Advocates that there is a very real commitment to what Commissioner Vonk pointed out, to universal design, full access and inclusion for everybody. And our staff are always part of site plan review and things like that. So again, I thank you for that true commitment. The question though, following up on your answer to Commissioner Skaggs' question, so is the opposition to that bill on the private side, folks that want to raise their own tigers as opposed to other zoos? Or
So,
what's, yeah.
That's a great question. So unfortunately, less than 10% of the zoos out there are AZA accredited. So actually we got to do a better job ourselves telling people what AZA means. But when people see a zoo or they visit a zoo, they don't necessarily know if it's AZA or not. So they go through a zoo and what comes out of that is, wow, why do they have animals? They have them all locked up, and they're usually in concrete pads, they're in small enclosures, they don't have proper medical care. So there are people that want to be able to have their private zoos and bring in tigers to drive attendance, but we're against that unless they meet strict standards. So what's in the bill that passed the House is if you're an AZA accredited zoo, we already know you meet those highest standards. So you can automatically get the permit to breed. But if you're not, then you have to demonstrate that you can provide the proper care, you're financially stable, so that if you go bankrupt, you don't release the animals. You do safety drills, you do annual physicals and stuff like that. So it's a complex situation, and our approach has been the more people that can care for these endangered animals that are focused on science and conservation, the better. So if you want to have these animals, then you have to meet the criteria just like anybody else does.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Antor.
Thank you, Chair. I just had a question. I wouldn't have not even asked this a year ago because I wasn't aware of it, but when I was at the zoo, I took a few kids there this summer. We had a great time. I was kind of curious. You mentioned the infrastructure and water lines and so forth. I noticed a lot of your water features on the outside have massive quantities of white foam on the top. And I was wondering if that is where it comes from, and is that water continually recycled through a filtration system to capture that, and what is that stuff?
It's not, and depending where you, well, it just depends where you saw it. There is some water features on site where the water does recycle. If it's areas where there are animals, it is treated. The white foam can come from many things. It could be based on how hard or how soft the agitation of the water. So I'm not...
Yeah, it was everywhere where there was animals, but there was like massive quantities of it, and I was wondering what it was, because, you know, we're pretty sensitive about water
right.
these days with the PFAS, and that's one of the telltales.
Yeah, PFAS can cause that.
So I was just curious if that water ends up going through, is it continually recycled, or does it go to the water treatment plant?
That's a complex issue.
Okay.
There's a lot of water that moves through our site, from natural springs to rainwater. And part of our infrastructure is in order to handle a rain event, that on the new front entry, our goal is to have a net zero impact on our water, so that if there's a rain event of 1 inch or less, it does not leave the site and enter the city stormwater system. It stays on site. And I would love to talk about this for a while because I have an environmental science background, but basically, if you can contain the water on site, that's one of the best ways to filter the water. So you contain it on site, it percolates to the soil, and it gets filtered. To know the exact reason of the water, I'd have to, why it foamed, I'd have to see it.
Maybe if they could sample that foam to see what's in it, but it just caught my eye because, you know, like I say, we're hypersensitive to foam now.
Absolutely.
Whereas before it was just foam, now it's...
There's nothing we're doing on site that would contribute to that. When we treat the water, it's because we're concerned about the alkalinity or the acidity of the water or the contaminants. We actually pull stuff out of the water through our filtration
That's just an observation. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have any other questions, so I guess we thank you, Peter, for your time today, and it sounds like great things are happening at the zoo. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will then move to item 5D, which is our special order of business from the Grand Rapids Public Museum, their annual update. And Dale Robertson is going to come forward. Good morning, Dale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. I'm Dale Robertson with the Grand Rapids Public Museum. I thank you for being able to be here this morning and give a little bit of update on how things are going at the Grand Rapids Public Museum. I'd like to begin with maybe a little bit of history for context, link that into how the millage that you all approved for submission to the voters has impacted how we are going about operating and serving the community, and then really end with a particular story about how all of those things are coming together. Okay. So a little bit of background in history. Oldest museum in the state of Michigan. We're the second largest museum in the state of Michigan in terms of size of our collections, which is about 250,000 by the most conservative count. And by that I mean most museums, if you think of the Riddell drugstore in the streets of Old Grand Rapids, most museums will count every pill bottle in there as one. We count the entire drugstore as one. Okay. So if I'm going to be wrong, I want to be wrong low. I don't want to be exaggerating high. 98% of what we have in our collections were donated by the people of West Michigan over 164 years. Now, I happen to believe that that is a unique data point in museums everywhere, but I also think that speaks, or I make the argument that speaks to just the culture of the community of West Michigan that donate for the good of the community. At our core, we are an educational institution. Okay? And so that informs the steps through which we go through in guiding what programs and exhibits and so forth that we take on. One of the things that the millage allowed us to do in reaching towards that educational institution mantle and responsibility is it allowed us to provide free admission for all children age 0 to 17 in Kent County, and to also provide free parking for all residents of Kent County. So that dealt with an accessibility issue. A few years ago, we reached out to actually the occupational therapy graduate program at Grand Valley State University when we decided that we wanted to begin to embrace something called universal design for learning. And the theory and the Adeo Robertson shorthand of what that stands for. It says that if we can get an experience and a design that works for those of us on the edges of the learning spectrum, it improves the experience for those of us in the middle, more in the middle of the learning spectrum. So we decided to make a particular outreach in defining what that spectrum is to reach out to the autism community. Now, educators tell me that autism is typically on a separate spectrum. I happen to be trained as a lawyer, and I'm going with it. We're all on the same spectrum until the judge or the jury says otherwise, right? So we made a specific outreach to the autistic community, began to work with the Autism Center at Hope Network, and in particular Dr. Mira Christian, who's still doing work with us, and began a process then where we had a series of exhibits that we did, and I won't name those now, that begin to embed those principles. But as a learning institution, we felt that we needed to make sure that we as staff were beginning to get more ingrained with what those principles are, so we could be better partners into the community. In addition to Dr. Christian, we then reached out to Professor Phil Stegging, who's at Calvin College in the Department of Education, that teaches courses on creating inclusive education communities. Right? So begin to use that as the basis, the academic foundation, and the training then for staff to be able to then say be better partners as we then go forward in creating both programs and exhibits. On that front too then, the millage dollars were helpful in us expanding our education staff, so then we can work more closely in designing tours and educational programs for the general public that were more directly aligned to what our curriculum needs are here. So we have that basis, okay, and now then we also then have to look at making sure that we are providing exhibits and educational programmings that are relevant and work and fulfill community needs. So we do typically these marketing surveys, focus groups about various topics, and the topic of toys kept coming up really high. So we need to do something on toys. So we have a group internally that looks at all the traveling exhibits. There's a lot of them out there. They're typically wildly expensive. And so we began to review the toys exhibits that were traveling, the amount of time that we could have them for, their cost, and the accompanying educational programming that goes along with them. And, but for the millage, we would not have had the financial stability to do what came next, which is the staff and the organization thought, you know what, we could design and build with community partners something better than is traveling the nation. We could have it for a longer time period. We could create our own educational programming to directly link up with what schools are teaching in the West Michigan area. And so we did. We would not have had the ability, the financial ability to have done it but for the millage. So that then began an outreach with, and I actually have a 3-page list here of all of the community collaborators and donors, but a couple of folks that I just mentioned just to give an idea of kind of input that we got in designing this exhibit. Children's Museum of Indianapolis, Comprehensive Therapy Center, Great Start, Grand Rapids Public Schools Early Childhood Specialists, and there's more. So about a half a dozen or so meetings, 20-some different iterations of the Toys exhibit, and it opened on October 27th. It's free with admission. It'll be up for a year. So there was a large outreach to the community, including one of your colleagues here, Emily Breevy, just happened to be have available this, like, the biggest aircraft carrier toy I think I've ever seen, and we coveted it, and so was able to have it on loan or donated from Commissioner Breevy in one of the sections. But it happened organically, all right? It was one of those things that it truly happened organically, how it came about. So I would encourage you, and what I've passed out, there are rack cards on your place about the 3 exhibits we have, including the toys. The one's in English, one is in Spanish, and I would encourage you to come visit and see toys. This is it's a full embracing of universal design for learning. We will continue to monitor use and look to make corrections throughout the year, and then take all the learnings from that and plug it into future exhibits. We tried to make sure that we put representation in there of every creed and culture and ethnicity, as well as also looking to make sure that we are hitting all learning styles and all physical needs. We say we may have not gotten it all correct, but it's an ongoing process, and our commitment to have broad inclusivity in everything that we do, and in how we interact to the community and to reach people no matter how they learn. The unofficial slogan for us as an educational institution is from my hero Temple Grandin, who's the mother of sensory therapy and integration, who said it takes all kinds of minds. And so that I think is probably, the toys is probably the best story I can tell of the commitments and the principles on which we plan to go forward and be broadly welcoming the entire community. The last thing that I'll mention you have on your place is also it's a community report. That was the one that came out just at the beginning of 2018. And we'll have another one coming out in 2019. We'll do one of those annually, so we have it both printed and online, which tells a little bit more of the story of what the museum is doing in the community and making use of the very generous support that we received from the millage passage in 2016. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I will conclude my remarks and be happy to, through you, answer any questions.
Very good, thank you. Are there any questions this morning, Commissioner Breevy?
Yeah. Thank you, Dale. I have the honor of serving on the museum board, and I just wanted to state that the staff at the museum is high quality, and I kind of got a front row seat the other day. I participate on the audit committee, so the financials of the museum are sound, and it was a clean audit, so that's amazing. Also in terms of the exhibits, the creativity of the staff is so impressive, and they really have fun doing it. Like the toys exhibit, that was actually my husband's G.I. Joe aircraft carrier, and they tracked me down through eBay, and we were selling it, and the museum wanted it, so it was a good opportunity to get rid of it locally. But I would encourage you all to go check out that collection. You're gonna see something that you grew up with as a kid, and the toys are divided up by the different generations. So take your kids or your grandkids along, and you guys can all relate. But there's definitely a lot of interactivity throughout all the exhibits at the museum. Not just that one, it's not just looking at things and reading things. It's touching and feeling and seeing what's going on. So it's a great learning experience all around. Dale's doing a great job. But one question that I have is, what's next on the horizon? any other exhibits that you know of or things you're working on?
So if I could answer that and first respond to the hands-on, and then I will get to the other one, thinking if, hopefully I'm not jumping the gun on something. One of the things, and I thank Commissioner Breivy for mentioning this, to be able to other things within the museum, we're doing something else that I also believe is unique amongst museums, is that we're in a process of recategorizing our collections so that the goal is that 75% will be able to be used in some way, shape, or form. Now the lawyer in me says if 98% of what you've been given donated by the people of West Michigan, they donated with an applied promise that they're going to be used. Right? And so by recategorizing them so you can pick something up and hold it, or maybe you've got to put on the gloves and have somebody there with you, but to actually touch something, it's those visceral experiences, right, that do something that creates a stronger hook for future information to land on. So our goal is to get more of the collections out and more of them on a routine basis and literally in the hands of our visitors. For what's next, we do have some things planned. We're bringing back Bodies Revealed, which will be next year, which isn't something else that has been continually requested. We also have we're beginning to plans for an exhibit that we actually were given by developed through the Smithsonian Institution called Changing America, and it is the story of the Emancipation Proclamation through the March on Washington. And so that will be coming out, but it'll be a lot of community programming and interactions that are being designed for that. That'll be opening probably in the summer. So those are that one, the Changing America, will be something more created here locally. The Bodies Revealed coming in will be one of the traveling exhibits that travel a nation.
Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Salfeld. Dale, thanks for being here today. Listening to a lot of your themes, I hear education, history, and the report prior to you had those same types of things: conservation, history, education, outreach, all of those. Can you maybe dwell on, seeing it as a joint millage between you and the zoo, is where do you collaborate, where do you look to in the future? Because a lot of things like conservation and species extinction could very easily be addressed and is addressed at a lot of museums across the country.
So, thank you, Commissioner. We have a lot of just back and forth collaborations these days where zoo people come to our place and we go to theirs and so forth. But what I think the special, really special opportunity here going forward is with the reintroduction of the rapids in the Grand River. The Grand Rapids Public Museum is one of the 6 opportunity sites that will be, the land around it will be developed on the very first wave, if you will. The director of our education programs, the local gal, Catholic Central grad, Central Michigan, and then PhD from Michigan Tech. She's an aquatic biologist and an expert on sturgeon and snuffbox mussels and all critters that swim in the Grand River. So I think there, and what Peter and I have had conversations about, is when that gets rolling and the site plan was designed to allow access into the river on a routine basis, that's when the collaboration, I think, between the two organizations really take off, that we can then make that bridge to things that swim in the fish and so forth, which Stephanie is a particular interest on, but they've got amazing expertise at the zoo for the other mammals that and other amphibians and so forth that are in the river, that we can then make connections there, refer people to go to the zoo for more experience and programming and so forth. We want all the cultural institutions in town to thrive, and I think this is a special opportunity between us two, though, particularly in the River Project, to really draw that distinction and have a further collaboration and linking with that opportunity.
And I appreciate the efforts on both of you, because there's a lot of issues that come up where everyone's operating within their own silos, protective of that. So, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities to even do more, and I appreciate both of you working together.
Commissioner Antor.
Thank you. At that time of year when certain movies will start coming out, there was one called A Christmas Story, which was my all-time favorite because I guess unfortunately I grew up during that era and I still remember all that cool stuff. There used to be an exhibit, I think it was either at Wurzburg's or Herpelsheimer's, it was the trolley car that used to go around, which I'll never forget that because it was the coolest thing when we go downtown to get on that. And I was wondering, do you guys have, do you own that? Do you have it? And is there any talk of, I don't imagine you can put it up and run it again, but to display that somehow?
They need a sponsor, Tom.
So actually, I have, I have a great answer for that, I think. No, we can't run it. We don't have enough of the track to put it up and run it, and there's a lot of, safety reasons. But a couple years ago, we started a fundraising event called Collections and Cocktails, and have different themes for parts of the collections. And the theme for this particular year happened to be transportation, and we usually pick an artifact for which the proceeds go to help restore, and it just so happens that the thing that got picked was the Herpelsheimer's train. So it is being refurbished in a way that will look like when it was the Rocket Express. We actually found a Life magazine photo from the 50s, of Christmas around the nation that featured that Rocket Express, going around the Herpelsheimer's store. So that's what we use to redo it, and it will be out during this Christmas season. The couple cars that we have, we didn't get all the cars, we collected 2 or 3, refurbished, and then people can see and then get in and take photos, and yes, so it's coming out.
That's really cool, because you can tell how much times have changed. That was the thrill of a lifetime, every Christmas to go ride on that. Now, probably not so much for kids.
Yeah. But parents and grandparents remember it, but it's part of that intergenerational sharing. That is partly also what we hope happens in the toys exhibit. You can come through as individuals in various age groups, but it's the intergenerational sharing and that storytelling then that is very, very valuable for just, a whole lot of reasons, just from academics to just core human relations.
Thank you.
Commissioner Womack.
Yes, I want to thank you, your administration and staff for the wonderful work at the museum. Also, when you talk about some of the school impact, do you have anything that's like a career day or anything that deals with, students, whether middle school, high school, elementary, but especially middle school and high school, about careers and professions associated with the museum, to kind of give them some type of aptitude or different options that are available when it comes to careers and profession pertaining to the museum, sir?
So we do a couple of things. One more general, but I think is having an impact on that particular question about museum interest, which was something that is we didn't anticipate going in. But we have a program called Immerse, and it's about 50 some classes are available a year. About a little over half come from GRPS. And classes come in, and it's typically 4th through 6th grade, and really more 3rd through 5th, where they spend every day for an entire week at the Grand Rapids Public Museum. The entire institution becomes their classroom, and so out of that piece, we found that many students have become interested in things that maybe they didn't know of before. Sometimes museum work. We are also beginning a partnership with the Grand Rapids Public Museum School, where the 8th graders are docents for a day on a monthly basis. They pick out an artifact, and they study, and they become experts on, and then they station themselves throughout the museum and then engage with guests, typically other classes, other students. And so that is another one of those opportunities. And then we do partner with Grand Valley State and GRCC on career days from various disciplines that they have. So that's it's pretty much a snapshot of what some of the things that we're doing.
Thank you. It's very interesting when we think of the hundreds of jobs associated inside and outside that keep a museum going, and the basic person could barely name 5 or 10. You know, it'd be just great for them to have the opportunity to know more about those careers. Also, I want to ask one last question. Art Prize, you know, the International Art Prize here in Grand Rapids is moved to bi-yearly, every 2 years, but we're still going to do the local Art Prize, you know, every year. Well, next year. How will the museum be participating, and will the museum be participating in those local off years where we still, you know, want to keep some excitement going here, and also how it helps all the businesses when we have Art Prize? I'm sure we're still going to have people from the state of Michigan and even some people from out of Grand Rapids sneaking in here for the local Art Prize. Are you participating in any way?
So if I could remember, add one more thing in your previous question. Another thing that program that we've launched last year and very happily received some additional funding for this year is Young Women in Science. And that is an after-school a program in partnering with GRPS, but brings middle school girls into the museum. So it is science, generally speaking, but also even including applications in cultural institutions like ours too.
Right.
So for Art Prize, correct, Commissioner, it is a different plan for next year. We actually have a conversation scheduled with the Art Prize leadership coming up next week. It will be individual spots throughout the community. Of course, I've got an idea of something that we can do, and whether or not it fits in some of their plans, we'll find that out next week. I've also done a little outreach, even just yesterday, for some organizations on the west side, because we are on the west side, to see what they're planning for our prize. And if the first idea that I have doesn't quite work, maybe we can jump in with something for them. So yeah, stuff's cooking. It's just not cooked yet.
Follow up with you so I can help promote and spread the word out here in Kent County. Thanks.
All right. I don't see any other questions. Again, thank you very much for everything you do at the great work at the museum there, and for that great presentation. Best wishes as the year goes forward.
Thank you.
We'll move next to our agenda item number 6, which is public comment. Just as a matter of background, during public comment, speakers should state their names and address. Has been our practice in years past. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Speakers will be notified at the 2-minute mark. They'll have 1 minute to complete their comment and will be told when the 3-minute mark is reached. Person may address the board on matters or issues which are relevant to county government. The chair may disallow public comment that is unduly repetitious, not relevant to county government, or relevant to matters not under consideration by the board. We'd ask speakers to line up in the queue and wait until your turn comes before addressing the commission. Now, before we start, I was notified that we have representatives from a group, Miriam Ackerman and Hillary Schulten, who are asking to present on behalf of a group today pursuant to our Rule 3.4D. When a group wishes to address the board, the chair may offer that the group designate spokesperson, and the chair will allow that person to speak on behalf of the board for a period not to exceed 15 minutes. We're going to do that with that group. We're going to put them at the end. So at this point, I would invite individuals that are not part of that group to provide their public comment first, and save that longer presentation for the conclusion of today's public comment. So anyone that is not part of that group may present at this time. And maybe there is not anybody. So I see one person coming forward. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Please state your name and address.
Yes, my name is Hema, G-E-M-A, it's pronounced Hema, last name Lowe, L-O-W-E, and I reside on the northwest side of Grand Rapids. Well, one more time, we're here, the group, I'm a volunteer organizer with Movimiento Cosecha, GR, and we are immigrant-led movement that is seeking to win permanent protection, dignity, and respect for all immigrants. And one of those things is that we are asking this body to do something about ending the contract the jail has, the Kent County Jail has with ICE. And that you will hear more arguments, but my part is to tell you that we get calls every single week with people separating because of the inhumane acts of ICE. And that's just true. That's just looking at you with a humane view. And still, it's not even in the agenda. I mean, I know there's a presentation and it's just a public comment, but it's not even in the agenda. You do have the responsibility. We just talked about in the presentation of the museum about emancipation, about doing something, doing a change. You are sitting there, you have an opportunity to make a change for your community, and your community asking you that. So when are you going to act?
Hello there. My name is Chandra Bowman. I live at 4145 Willow Drive in Grand Rapids. First off, I want to thank all of you who could show up and fulfill your elected duty by being here today. I agree with the previous commenter about ending the contract with ICE. In a country founded on immigrants, it's kind of inhumane to jail people who are just coming here looking for a better life and to separate their children from them and then lease them out to other families through Bethany Christian Services. Also, I want to comment that not limiting the special presentations to 15 minutes as stated in the agenda seems a pretty transparent ploy to delay public comment until members of the public have to leave for other work or other obligations. I guess that's about it. Thank you again for your time.
Mi nombre es Idalia Tinoco.
My name is Idalia Tinoco.
Vivo aquí en el condado de Kent.
I live here in Kent County.
Y soy un comerciante.
And I'm a business owner.
Quiero pedirles que por favor ya tomen en cuenta lo que la comunidad estamos pidiendo.
I would like to please listen to what the community has been saying and asking for.
Estamos pidiendo que por lo menos pongan el tema del fin de contrato en la agenda.
I would ask you that you at least put on the agenda the topic of ending the contract.
Para que podamos resolver este problema juntos.
So that together we can resolve this problem.
Yo creo que es un beneficio mutuo tanto como para mi comunidad como para el gobierno.
I think that this is a mutual benefit for my community along with also for my government.
De muchas formas hemos tratado de que se termine este contrato.
We have tried in many ways to end this contract.
Y no hemos visto respuesta de ustedes que se supone que son hacen lo de la comunidad, lo que le conviene a la comunidad.
And we have not heard any responses from you who are supposed to be doing what the community asks of you.
Solo le vuelvo a repetir que solamente queremos una oportunidad para que se discuta este tema.
So we ask you again that we just need one opportunity for this topic to be discussed.
Eso es todo. Gracias por escucharme.
That is all. Thank you for listening.
Good morning. I'm Paul Malinowski. I've written all of you several letters, and I would just like to encourage you to end the contract, the ICE contract. I believe that Kent County established the Kent County Jail for the incarceration of the people of Kent County. I don't think any of us envisioned what it is being used for presently. Thank you.
Okay, is there any other public comment other than the group that is wishing to present? I don't see any, so you can come forward now. I don't think I have all your names, so I'll let you introduce yourselves. But you do have 15 minutes now to present. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing us this opportunity. My name is Elvira Hernandez. I'm actually with the ACLU of Michigan. So again, thank you for giving us this opportunity for both the ACLU of Michigan in the Grand Rapids area and for the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center. We oftentimes work together. I've seen others time and time again show up at these meetings. I actually am also a resident of Kent County. I live in Sparta, right on the ridge. I grew up there. I still live there, even though I work in the city of Grand Rapids. So I've seen the videos of other members, such as Cosecha, Movimiento Cosecha, come in time and time again and force. So again, I'm a paralegal at the Grand Rapids office of the ACLU of Michigan, and a long-time farm worker advocate. As before, I've been a migrant farm worker myself. I've seen firsthand how this contract has separated families, how it's actually separated my extended family. I've seen my nieces fall in love with immigrants because of the current immigration policy, have been going through immigration process, but because of insignificant traffic violations, have fallen into arrests that maybe you or I wouldn't even be arrested, and because of those simple arrests have now been separated, and because of this contract have fallen into the Kent County Jail and been detained by ICE. So now those families are separated. Actually, one of my niece and nephews are in Mexico right now after 4 years of not seeing their father. Their word right now is because they were driven down there by my sister, their grandmother, they don't even recognize their dad. How it's, this contract, it's separating families because of simple misdemeanors, a traffic ticket, again, that you or I may not think would, or even consider would lead to family separations. Not only do these ICE detainers lead to these individuals to have or probably leave behind unresolved court affairs, because a lot of times ICE will come, detain them, take them off to other detention centers, probably deport them before they even resolve their court situations here. So as far as Michigan knows, they still have fines or other issues going on here. But because of the detention and removal, they can't even resolve that. So the detention here is already making money off of them being detained, but they're not even resolving why they were even detained in the first place. What you might consider as family separation might be parents being separated, maybe not living in the same home. But what we consider family separation is being separated by thousands of miles and years of not seeing another family member. Children not recognizing their parents. I've been at the border. I myself was actually born at the border, being brought here at 4 years old. I've seen, and it's really amazing to me, how many millions of dollars are being spent on detaining and removing and keeping out individuals who are part of our community through simple traffic stops or misdemeanors when it's not even a requirement. It's not even required by you guys to have, or for the sheriff to have this contract. As a county, which includes Grand Rapids, the major city, which is actually a welcoming city, and for generations that has, I've been living on the ridge where I grew up and live now. I would hope that this commission and the sheriff will reflect the welcoming sentiment that not only the city is part of, but that the government or the almost exiting governor has wanted the state to be a welcoming state. With this, I wanted to pass it on to Hillary, who is one of the attorneys with the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center. Thank you.
Thank you for having us here today, Commissioners, and hearing us out. The pain and destruction caused by ICE nationwide, as well as right here in Kent County, is easy to see. But what we've heard over and over again from the County Commission and the Sheriff's Department is there's nothing we can do about this. Our hands are tied. And that's just simply not true. There's so much that you as commissioners can do and that the Sheriff's Department can do to end this destructive practice. We've distributed to you today a sign-on letter from numerous organizations, hundreds of residents, faith leaders, business owners who have come together to say we don't want this in our county. We encourage you to read it and listen to our words today and think about what you might be able to do. Your hands are not as tied as you might think. We want to clarify a few key legal points that we feel have been misleading in both put forth by the Sheriff's Department as well as the County Commission. We first want to make sure everyone understands what a detainer is. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what the Sheriff's Department is required to do when ICE issues a detainer. It's an administrative warrant. It's not a judicial warrant. There's a big difference. A detainer is simply a request from Immigration and Customs Enforcement for a local law enforcement agency to hold an individual for immigration purposes. It's not a requirement. It's completely voluntary to comply. And this has been reinforced locally here by Judge Paul Maloney in a recent case, Lopez. Judge Maloney called it a well-settled principle that cooperation with ICE detainers is discretionary rather than mandatory. Judge Maloney further explained that when ICE agents issued valid detainers and administrative warrants to local law enforcement, they are requesting, his words, that local law enforcement provide operational support by executing a warrant. Under ICE's current policy, the detainer satisfies the request element because cooperation by local law enforcement is optional. This is an option that is wrong for Kent County. An administrative warrant, as I mentioned, is significantly different from a judicial warrant. ICE, in its sole unchecked discretion, can issue these administrative warrants. They think someone's illegal in the United States, they can issue an administrative warrant and lock them up. Individuals, when they're picked up on local charges and then handed over to Kent County, it's approximately handed over by Kent County to ICE. It's taking approximately 6 weeks before that individual can have a hearing before an immigration judge to check on the validity or propriety of their detention. These are parents, these are grandparents, brothers, sisters, individuals who, unlike in the criminal context where a judge has to sign off on a warrant to say whether the arrest and detention is proper, ICE has just decided that these individuals should be arrested. So what's the county's role in all this? As you know, the Kent County Sheriff's Department has entered into a completely voluntary contract whereby the Sheriff's Department agrees to hold individuals on these detainer requests. The contract, a typical detainer request authorizes the county to hold an individual for 48 hours beyond the local charges. Our contract enhances that time period to 72 hours, allowing individuals to be held for longer than the typical 42. We are calling on the county today to stop the voluntary practice of working with ICE. We're not asking that the county stand in the way of ICE doing its job, simply that it not stand up and offer our county resources to help ICE in this way. It's substantially different. We're not asking the county to hinder ICE in any way, just not volunteer our county resources. We don't need to volunteer our resources to ICE. ICE is a massive federal enforcement agency with $1 billion in budget. We need every last cent of our county dollars to enrich our own community, as we heard today, and keep our community safe from actual threats present in our county, not these hyped up, baseless fear-mongering about the threat of immigrants posed to our communities.
That's right.
Again, we're not asking you to stand in the way of ICE doing its job. Just stand aside without volunteering our county resources.
You're at 10 minutes.
Thank you. Another really important point that we want to point out is that Kent County, and this is where the County Commission comes in as the holder of the purse strings here. While ICE detainers are completely voluntary, our state laws directing how the jails shall be run and the budget shall be run is not. Pursuant to MCL 801.1, the sheriff may only hold individuals for the U.S. government where the cost and care and maintenance of those persons shall be paid by the United States. Actual costs to be fixed and determined by the Michigan Welfare Commission upon application of the sheriffs of the respective counties of this state and not otherwise. It's important to note that we don't know exactly how much it costs to hold someone for ICE. There are additional requirements for holding someone for Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The Sheriff's Department has to comply with the National Detention Standards, a whole separate standard of procedure for holding someone for ICE. There's training and compliance that has to go into the sheriff's staff for ensuring that they're in compliance with these standards, as well as the ever-evolving case law surrounding this often litigated, very controversial policy. These are just a few of the reasons why it is completely legally permissible and advisable that the county end this contract. And Miriam Ackerman is going to tell you a little bit more about what we're specifically asking. Thank you.
Good morning, Miriam Ackerman. I'm a senior staff attorney with the American Civil Liberties Union of Michigan and a resident of Kent County. I live on Hall Street. We are here today asking you to support families and community. For months, members of this community have come here telling you how their families are being torn apart right here in Kent County. And for months, you've heard how Kent County, by having a contract, is volunteering its resources to ICE and thereby supporting family separation. And for months, the community has begged you to take action. And for months, the community has been told there is nothing you can do. And as my colleague just told you, that is not true. The former sheriff said he had to have the contract. As we explained in our letter, as she just said, that is not the case, and we hope the new sheriff will bring a fresh perspective to this issue and restore trust with the community. But we are here today because you, the commission, can and should take action. We believe that you value family and community. We believe you want to keep Kent County safe, and we believe that you value immigrants and the incredible contributions they make to our community. We believe it's time for you to act and to hear the voices of those who say that Kent County should not be volunteering its resources to support family separation. You have the letter in front of you that's signed by a diverse set of organizations within our community. The Hispanic Center, LINK, the Dominican Sisters, the Clergy of United Church of Christ, the Christian Reformed Church, Office of Social Justice, the West Michigan Coalition for Immigration Reform, the Sierra Club, Treetops Collective, Justice for Our Neighbors, the Micro Center, hundreds and hundreds of individuals, and the signatures are still coming in. Our ask for you is very simple. Pass a resolution that does three things. First, proclaim that Kent County is a county that welcomes immigrants. Let the community know you stand with them, not against them. Second, we ask that resolution call on the sheriff to end the contract with ICE and stop volunteering resources from Kent County for family separation. It is up to the sheriff to end the contract, but a statement from this body would send a very powerful message. And third, we ask you to prohibit any county funds from being used for federal immigration enforcement. Kent County right now is subsidizing ICE. ICE only pays part of the cost of incarcerating our community members so they can be deported and separated from their families. Your community does not want you to subsidize family separation. Make it clear that if ICE wants to tear our community apart, they're not going to do it with our dollars. This is just the start. Commit to working with the community to find ways to support the immigrants. Pass this resolution and then really sit down with the community and figure out all the other options that we've presented in our letter, other things that you can do. We are here to help. The ACLU, the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center, has provided you with a legal analysis. We're happy to work with you on the language of a resolution. We've explained in our legal analysis why the obstacles that have been put up are not, in fact, obstacles, and why you have the power to do this and why you should do this. Please show that you care about family, you care about community, and you want to keep everyone in Kent County safe. The time for action is now. Please pass the resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
End the contract. We want it now. What do we want? End the contract. We want it now. We don't get it. Shut it down. We don't get it. Shut it down. We don't get it. Shut it down.
We have completed item 6, and we're going to move to item 7 of our agenda, which is the consent agenda, and I will call on Commissioner Melton.
Thank you, Chair. I move that we adopt the consent agenda as is written in our notes here.
Is there support?
Support.
Support by Commissioner Brevy. Questions or comment on the consent agenda? I do not see any. This is a roll call vote. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the motion to adopt the consent agenda, Commissioners Womack.
Yes.
Voorhees.
Yes.
Funk.
Yes.
Talon.
Yes.
Steck.
Yes.
Skaggs.
Yes.
Ponstein.
Yes.
Morgan. Melton.
Yes.
Mast.
Yes.
Korndike.
Yes.
Coleman.
Yes.
Jones. Hennessy.
Yes.
Volkowski.
Yes.
Brevy.
Yes.
Vice Chair Bolter.
Yes.
Commissioner Antor.
Yes.
Chair Salfeld.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 17 yeas, 0 nays. The motion passes. The consent agenda is adopted.
Thank you. We move then to agenda item number 8, which are resolutions. We have one this morning, and for that, I will call on Commissioner Brevy.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to move Resolution 92 of today's date. It's the fiscal year 2018-19 Kent County Traffic Enforcement Grant from the Michigan Office of Highway Safety Planning, and that's from the Sheriff's Department.
Support. Support by Commissioner Korndike. Questions or comments on this resolution? Commissioner Stack?
Thank you, Chair. I understood at the time of the Finance Committee that this is part of a larger grant. I don't know if the sheriff is here. What is the total grant involved in this, and how is the allocation determined?
I'm sorry, I don't have the total amount for the whole area community. We don't administer this grant program. It's administered out of Wyoming PD. So what I have are designated amount.
But it's,
I can get that for you later, though.
Is it basically on a pro rata basis?
It is. It's based on population. It's based on patrol area. So it's divvied up based on what areas we would be doing the enforcement in. They were going to do it in their jurisdictions. We'll do it in our jurisdiction.
And most of it is considered to be applied to the cost of policing for driving under the influence?
Correct. So it covers the overtime expenses to add extra patrol services to designated times throughout the holiday season, and absolutely aimed at trying to prevent and enforce operating under the influence. It also, obviously, if you're out there doing patrol work, at that point, you would find other issues that might be going on and enforce those as well. So it's not only for those purposes, but that's the target.
So an ancillary question to that, if I might, is you talked about this at the finance as well. When you are engaged in a traffic stop involving concern for utilization of marijuana versus alcohol, you were talking about that there's an extensively longer period of time involved. Can you just tell me what is that difference in time, and what do you project that's going to do to your policing requirements?
It's going to substantially affect us, and obviously we already have this concern today, even when controlled substances are used illegally and the person then chooses to drive, that we absolutely run into people who are driving under the influence of a controlled substance right now. But because there's not a per se limit, like there would be for drunk driving, and
0.8 standard on alcohol levels.
Yep, there's a designated standard, so if you're over 0.08 and you're in alcohol and we stop you, we've got a roadside test that pretty easily can detect that. The process goes pretty readily. But because drugs can be so varied in their symptoms and they can be much more difficult to detect, you might be able to detect that somebody's impaired and know that you're dealing with an impaired driver, but you have to go through different steps to try to determine the type of impairment, and that would include a blood test in most circumstances. So it takes much more time for an officer to deal with this type of stop. There's generally court time that's involved later because of the added difficulties. So, you know, it's something that we're going to obviously in this community and every community across Michigan have to really try to put some focused research into, because otherwise we're going to lose a lot of patrol time.
Is there presumptive consent for those blood tests, such that you lose your license if you don't consent?
No, the laws are not as readily
With
guided
alcohol,
towards
you
that.
would lose your license.
Alcohol there is, you have to submit to a PBT. There is currently some pilot tests going for roadside test for marijuana impairment. But again, what we have to do right now is to detect that there's an impairment. There's a series of sobriety tests that they use similar to what they would do for alcohol. And if somebody doesn't pass a sobriety test, that constitutes as probable cause for the officer to then take the person to have a blood draw done. But because you're not given a PBT test, there's not that consent that has to happen on the roadside. You do have to consent to the sobriety testing, though, if the officer has reasonable suspicion.
It's a brave new world.
Yep.
Commissioner Womack.
Just a simple question to add to that. When you're looking for drugs besides alcohol influencing a driver, are there going to be any new type of testing besides just the sobriety test to find out if they might be impaired by another drug, or especially with Prop 1 passing, trying to find out just what new testing methods there may be before it gets to that drawing of blood?
So there is a pilot test that's currently underway for Michigan State Police to test a saliva test that could be administered after somebody had failed the sobriety. Physical agility that they have to go through right now. The status of that hasn't been released. I don't know the success rate of that roadside testing, so that's what we're waiting for. I will tell you that in Michigan, in general, you're going to see a lot of strategies to try to improve the ability of an officer to ascertain if somebody's under the influence of controlled substance, because necessity will require that we continue to push forward in that until we're able to really get to a point where it works very similar to alcohol. But some of the other questions that are going to have to be answered is, will there be a per se limit, for example, for marijuana? Will there be an actual amount that a blood test yields where we can say, if you're at this level, you were impaired at the time you were driving? That has to be vetted out Michigan law yet. Nationally, they're also working through some of those issues. So this is a whole new world for us, and I think we're going to have many, many changes in the state of Michigan, and the best we can do is try to stay in touch with our legislatures, continue to advise what the current status is, and try to work as hard as we all can to keep our community safe. But this is a factor.
Will the saliva test, do you know how many days or month, how accurate it will be on how long ago they consumed marijuana?
That, you know, and that's a huge range. But the level that is present in the blood is probably where you're going to see most of the focus.
Okay, thank you.
Just want to make a point of order here. I'm sure this new law that just got passed is of interest, and we can have a separate session with the sheriff if we want to do that. But let's try to keep it our questions zoned in on the resolution that's before us. So Commissioner Voorhees is next.
Maybe you cut me out there. Thank you, Sheriff, for being with us this morning. Do you know, is there, I heard something, and maybe this is more for Linda Howell, but that there are portions that municipalities or that can exempt themselves from in this act?
And I'll defer to the comments of the commissioner. I think that it would be very beneficial for us to really look at the entire proposition and review it and understand it in its completeness. But that is not for exempting the use of recreational marijuana. It's actually dealing with the sales and production of it. So.
Okay, Commissioner Antor?
Well, thank you, Chair. I had a question about roadside procedure, so I can wait.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of questions that are going to get generated from this new act, and what I'd recommend is we give Sheriff's Department a little bit of time, because there's a lot of stuff that, frankly, we're going to have to wait on the state to have rulings on to answer questions, and maybe we can have a work session sometime next year to just review how that changes things. So, Commissioner Womack?
Yes. I brought up some of those questions because this grant is from increase impaired driving enforcement, and it says to a lesser extent seatbelt enforcement. So what it's saying, to a lesser extent seatbelt enforcement, there seems to be some emphasis on this increase impaired driving enforcement. And since we're voting on this today, I thought it was important that we had at least cover some of what the impaired driving would be. So I just wanted to add that.
No, it's a valid point. I'm just making the point that we don't have all the answers yet for what this new law that just got passed on Tuesday is going to have, and I think if we give just a little bit of time, we'll get more of that, and then maybe have a work session to talk about that, or maybe a presentation would be better for the board at that time. So thank you. Okay, any other questions on this resolution? I do not see any. This is not a roll call vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Sheriff. We move then to, and by the way, it is now Sheriff. Congratulations on that. We move then to public comment. This is the 1-minute public comment period. Is there any additional public comment today? I do not see any, so we will move to item number 10, which are reports. Are there any commissioner reports this morning? Commissioner Bukowski.
Well, thank you, Chair. It's my bi-monthly report from the Friend of the Court Advisory Committee. Good things continue to happen at the Friend of the Court relative to things that we've worked on with them. Two most important things: continued getting good data on the early engagement process. That's getting if there isn't a marriage, that they're working on paternity issues early on, and so good data there. And most importantly, we got some great data from the Responsible Parenting Program, which is helping non-custodial parents get connected to work opportunities. So it diverts folks from an enforcement track to getting support so they can get income, so they can meet their obligations. So a lot of good things happening, and I do believe there is another opening on that committee. We did replace former Commissioner Chivas' seat. However, one of our awesome members, Tony Jaliffe, moved back to Detroit. So that'll be coming to fill his spot. So again, good stuff, and all the rest is in the report from the Friend of the Court.
Okay, any other reports? I didn't see any other hands, so we will move then to item 11, which are miscellaneous comments. Any miscellaneous? Commissioner Antor.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to mention our Veteran of the Year, Robert Anderson, today. I was, when you stop and think about, he's attended 800 military funerals. That's just staggering to me, because I know every year we honor one Gold Star family each year, and the emotional impact that has on people that attend and are part of that is pretty overwhelming. And that's unbelievable that we have people that are willing to do that. And I know that group is getting a little older, and they're having a rough time finding people to fill in for those military funerals. So I just want to say how much I really appreciate, Betsy, I appreciate your words, because I feel them absolutely, we don't think about things like this. And it's incredible what he's done, so I appreciate the fact that we're honoring him. So.
I meant to point out real quick, he also had the privilege, not the opportunity, to lay a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, and he had listed that as one of the things that he cherished more than anything else he had done, and I just think that be what I would say I would cherish more than anything else.
Commissioner Melton, since you're speaking, why don't you go ahead?
Thank you, Chair. Couple things. I attended an absolute amazing luncheon, the YWCA recognition luncheon for community women's leaders, and oh my goodness, again, sitting back and feeling a little bit insignificant when you listen to what some of these giants in our community are doing, and thankfully they are. There was a student from Caledonia who was awarded, and I can't remember the award, and I forgot when I was bringing all my other things, I forgot my little cheat sheet, but suffice it to say that she has endured more in her 18 years surgery-wise and whatever else, and still continues to maintain good grades and going forward, and has great future plans. So very, very inspiring. I've been asked to become a member of the board of Sheldon House. It is kind of an offshoot of Cherry Street Health. They deal with, it's a clubhouse for persons who struggle with mental health issues, and I'm very excited about that. And I guess I'm just going to throw this out there because it's so on my mind. We all have had letters that have been blowing up our emails, I know. Certainly I have at least, and I just cannot ignore them. So last night I was thinking about this. Just two very quick quotes. A true leader has the confidence to stand alone, the courage to make tough decisions, and the compassion to listen to the needs of others. He becomes a leader by the quality of his actions and the integrity of his intent. Douglas MacArthur. You are not here merely to make a living. You are here in order to enable the world to live more amply, with greater vision, with a finer spirit of hope and achievement. You are here to enrich the world, this is referring to leaders, and you impoverish yourself if you forget the errand. That's Woodrow Wilson. So again, Chair, I am going to respectfully just ask wholeheartedly with all that I am that you would consider, please, looking into a task force, looking into a way that we can meet the needs of our community that has month after month come to let us know that they are hurting. And maybe we won't have all the perfect solutions, but Chair, perhaps we can come up with something that will allow this community, this group of people, to know that we as leaders want them to live with greater vision, with finer spirits of hope and achievement, and that we will become leaders by the equality of our actions and the integrity of our intents. So I leave it at that.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Skaggs.
Thank you, Chair. On a lighter note, congratulations to the East Grand Rapids High School girls cross country team. They're state champs in Division II. And to the East Grand Rapids girls swim and dive team, who are conference champions. And hopefully the next time we meet, we'll add them to the list of 154 state championships from my beloved East Grand Rapids High School.
Thank you. Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Selfeld. I appreciate the request to get more information from the Sheriff's Department regarding Prop 1. I thought also another area, if we're going to be doing that, I think the Health Department might want to weigh in on this. I don't know what things are going to be in place on the different strengths of marijuana, where it's coming from, what are other things into it. It's just a big can of worms that I think have been open, thinking that this is going to be the save-all for everything. I wanted to comment a little bit more on the zoo. I know I've been speaking for the past couple months. If you are in support of the zoo and trying to get them to a status to breed large animals, if something's going to happen, it's going to happen in lame duck. And right now I'm told the #1 opposition to this is the Detroit Zoo. And this is old classic East against West. I know the governor's not a big fan of it, but basically the bill that's left the House is being stuck in committee, and the chair of that committee owns a little backyard zoo. So that's one of the big hurdles that we've got to jump. But I encourage every single commissioner here to call all your West Michigan senators and just tell them what was said at the comments today. People from all 83 counties have visited that zoo this year. People from all 50 states have visited that zoo this year. If that's not pure Michigan, I don't know what is. And then on a final note, we have a lot of great people serving a lot of great committees in this county and do it without not even being known or recognized. One of those individuals passed away this past week. Had an opportunity to work with him for 16 years in the engineering and land surveying field. Tom Chettleburl was a leader in our remonumentation program, one of the it's been held up to example within the state of one to follow. We were one of the first to get all of our monuments into the ground. Tom was a great individual because he got surveyors where it was protected information, where you did the investment in the money to find where section corners are, what you use for your property descriptions, for the companies in Kent County to share that information, so when we put those monuments in the ground, there wouldn't be a question that that is a spot that everyone agreed on. He worked hard that way. He had a heart of gold. When I worked for him, we had a percentage of surveys we did every year in the inner city, and we gave them discounts like nothing else. Sometimes even if they couldn't pay, we wouldn't charge them. But Tom realized that it's no different if you needed a survey in the inner city or in the suburbs, or your ability to pay. If someone wanted to improve their lot in life, their property or anything, that he went the extra mile to do that. So I just, I knew him a little bit more personally, but he did pass away this past week. He was battling cancer, but he died of a heart failure. So I just wanted to say there are a lot of people like Tom that serve this county and no one ever knows who they are or what they do. But that's one of the things about Kent County that's unique, and I'm sure other counties have businesses that do that too. But I think we hear it more and more here, and I just wanted to recognize Tom and his family.
Thank you. Commissioner Breedy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I wanted to invite you all to our CHAC meeting. It's next week, Thursday, starting at noon at the Health Department. I haven't seen the agenda yet, but I'm sure we'll have an interesting conversation.
Very good. Commissioner Coleman.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that I realized today that this Veterans Day weekend I need to remind my kids of something, and that is that kids, we stand up to honor our veterans, and that's because it's their service that gives us the opportunity to discuss and debate and have that freedom. So we stand up to honor the particular veterans that are in our midst, but we stand up also to honor those who aren't here because they didn't make it home, because they sacrificed for us. So that's something I'll remind my kids of this weekend.
Thank you, Commissioner Coleman. Commissioner Hennessy.
We had a very good report on sort of a big overview for the zoo, but things also happen on a day-to-day basis. And at noon today, there's a facilities planning meeting. So the planning that was talked about continues on a day-to-day broad basis. That's at noon. Then this evening, one of the core values is to celebrate, and it is the volunteers who will be celebrated at an appreciation dinner. And many of the board members will also be participating in these activities. We all have a very active role. Commissioner Voorhees and I both have very active roles to work with the zoo and to make sure that its mission and the 4 core values are fulfilled.
Thank you. Commissioner Talon.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciated the presentation on the budget this morning, and as I listened to that, a couple things really jumped out at me, and I hope they jumped out at my colleagues as well. One was in the Human Services section where it said that we as a county try to respond to the needs of vulnerable populations. And then in the law enforcement section, it talked about protecting the safety and security of our citizens. And in the context of what we heard during public comment, it just struck me to wonder whether we really are protecting the most vulnerable in our community, whether we're doing as much as we can. It's such a tragedy. In my work as a commissioner and being involved in the community, I hear on an ongoing basis how the activities of ICE are just devastating a very vulnerable portion of our community. I want to continue to emphasize that. I want to make sure that we hear that and suggest we should be thinking about that as we look at our budget, as we look at what Commissioner Melton suggested, finding a way to address what's happening. So, thank you.
Commissioner Bulkowski.
Thank you, Chair. First, real quick, when we're talking about Prop 1, we can't forget Network 180 because their work with the substance abuse issues and just how that all fits within that. So when we have that fuller conversation, I'm pretty sure we won't, but just in case. Second, when it comes to the budget, huge congratulations to the early childhood millage crew. They had a very successful go at the ballot. So yes, our taxes will be going up. And the question is that a December collection, and will our budget be amended in the next 2 weeks, or will the amendment happen after?
There will be a request coming for you in the next few weeks related to that. So you will have to deal with that, make a decision to put that on the ballot as a formal, in the budget. Yes,
all right.
To receive those funds.
All right, thanks. And then last but definitely not least, following up on the other comments, and definitely huge thanks to the folks from the ACLU and the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center for coming out today and providing pretty straightforward perspective on the issue that we face and decisions that we're not making, or actually we are making decisions by not really looking at it. Whatever it's worth, you know, when I had an opportunity to be part of the Latino Community Coalition candidate forum a couple weeks ago, I don't know if it was necessarily jeers, but it surely wasn't cheers. When I answered the question, will you end the contract today? I said no. I continue to say we can't end the contract today. However, I will work with you to end the contract. Our work as a county commission, as some of us have been saying since June 25th when folks started coming out, we are a slow, deliberative body, and that's the reality. Unfortunately, we've been delayed by over 5 months by not let's just take it on the way we take on other issues. So I guess my request, maybe it's rhetorical at this moment, for the chair and the sheriff to answer by our next meeting or at our next meeting, will the task force be put together or not? Yes or no? Again, I've had very positive conversations with the sheriff and with the chair about openness. Are we going to do it or not? And if we're not, then we'll find other ways to try to force that issue forward. However, we have to do it. So again, I greatly appreciate the 4 requests that were part of that letter that many of us have received, and the written copy today. However, again, looking at what is there, numbers 2 and 3, I can't get there without the number 4, which is we as a county commission, that's what we're elected to be as a county commission, to dive into this, spend a lot more time knowing what's really happening to families. As Commissioner Talon said, it's real, and what's really happening. So that continues to be where my commitment is, and I hope we know within the next 2 weeks, is it going to happen or not, and if so, when, and let's get moving on it. So thank you very much.
Commissioner Mast.
Yes, Chair, thank you. I just want to give a status report on the process finding a new executive director of the Network 180. Adam London is leading a nice task force for that. There's a community questionnaire survey going out that's went out to, I think, all of us as well as all the board members of Network 180. So please fill that out and get it back to him. I think it's got to be back in soon, by the end of this week, I think, or so. 14th, I guess, next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Womack.
Yes, I'd like to just start off saying that Martin Luther King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. I'm looking at some things that are happening in our county. You know, I appreciate the Friend of the Court Task Force. It almost reminds me of the Youth Initiative policy in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Once it was stated, people thought things would be better in our city for the youth, but we had to actually go through that Youth Initiative policy and go back and just represent the fact that the community still felt that children rights were being violated, and found out that it wasn't as strong as possible. The Friend of the Court Task Force did some great changes, but now it seems that the committee that we have for Friend of Court has overlooked the fact that right now there's a cry in our community, and for some reason there's nobody on that board that has a direct connection to our community to know the number of males who have been charged by the Attorney General, and now they're looking at putting them in prison for child support. And it puts the Kent County Sheriff's Department in the middle because of those deputies that are going on those houses, knocking on those doors, telling these guys about these warrants. And some of them now from the state of Michigan, some of them owe as low as $4,000 in child support and are facing 5 to 10 years in prison. I seen one guy give $6,000 since the announcement, and the Attorney General just told him 2 days ago if he comes up with $4,000 more, he will drop the case. And this young man is in the streets now doing anything and everything possible to come up with $4,000 so he doesn't spend 4 years in prison. So I just want to make sure when we make these task force that recommendations are really recommendations that are going to change, that we have committees that are going to keep in real time with what is happening in the community, and we're working in the community to be able to bring that issue, because it's put the county sheriff's department in the middle of these young men thinking they're making promises they can't keep, because this guy was first told if he came up with $2,000 he wasn't going to prison. 2 months later it said if you come up with $4,000, and then 2 days after he gave $4,000, they said, can you come up with another $4,000? And I can get you the paperwork on that case. When it comes to the ICE situation, I've been really looking at the fact that I found out a little more information on the news than I'm really getting here at the county commission. It seems that some bureaucrats don't want to really listen until lawyers get involved. Last night, when the lawyers from the ACLU said this was something that could be broken, this was something voluntarily, it seemed like the response from the county was a little different than when I was saying Kalamazoo has opted out. Other counties have opted out, so they're somewhat possible. It seemed different from the reaction that the protesters were giving when they were saying that this could be opted out. So I am very looking forward to hearing an update by Sheriff DeYoung. And I know she's new, but I know she's well equipped to handle the situation because she's been with the Sheriff Department for many, many years, and that's why she was appointed to that position, because she's the most qualified in that Sheriff's Department to take over and handle the duties of the Sheriff Department. So I don't think we should be treating her like a rookie, because she came in well qualified to do her job. And I think those of us that are really interested in, not saying whether you're interested in voting to end the ICE contract or voted against it, I think we all should be interested in hearing the update from our Sheriff Department on the ICE contract, why we are in the contract, what are the benefits of the contract, how much have we went through already over this $18,000 contract? What happens if a lawsuit comes to Kent County? How much money will we spend the first day, the first week, the first month? There's no way that this $18,000 is going to really bear the weight of the burden of what is happening with ICE, and that's why with my investigation into Kalamazoo and other counties, that's why it didn't take a blink of an eye for them, both Republicans and Democrats, to come together and end that ICE contract. Also with I'd like to say to the protesters, I'm sure I got some politicians mad at me. I probably have some protesters mad at me, but I think your universal concern for the children that are being ripped apart from their families, I think that really stands upon its own. And I think it doesn't need theatrics or special effects for people to respect that. And I do respect you. And I just think that when we have less disruptions, it gives us, those of us that do want to speak up for your issue, a better playing field for us to come up and talk about it. A lot of issues we bring to the county, nobody always gets their way. When there's a vote, I don't always get my way. There's other people that don't get their way. But that is what government is, and that's the decorum that we do have. So I hope we can continue to have peaceful talks today and great presentations like we had from the ACLU. I am going to be writing up a resolution to end the ICE contract and sending it to Sheriff DeYoung. I'm going to be looking for other commissioners to bring support for it. I am going to be talking to commissioners, starting with the chair, so I can make sure I don't violate any rules, looking to bring a motion for discussion on that resolution to the Kent County Commission. Thank you.
Okay, any other miscellaneous? I do not see any. I'll conclude by just commenting on this question of task force that keeps coming up. Want to be very careful here. We have in Kent County elected sheriff, elected prosecutor, elected clerk, elected drain commissioner, and then county commissioners. The Board of Commissioners does not have the ability to direct policy under those elected areas, other areas of elected officials, and so that's why just to create a task force to dictate what sheriff policy is going to be is not going to be very workable. But I know that there's other elements that have been talked about being looked at short of trying to direct the sheriff to do something which we don't have the right to do. And I'm going to yield the rest of my time to Administrator Britt to talk about some efforts that he's been undertaking now for, actually this all began way back in June, so we have not been ignoring the requests that have been made by certain commissioners, but I'm going to let him go ahead and speak to what he's been working on.
Yeah, this is something we talked about a bit at the executive committee meeting. I spoke briefly about this a couple weeks back. The fact that we do get the commissioner's wish to deal with this issue. There's no doubt about it. I think comments were made this morning about finding a way to address what's happening, dive into what's happening with families. Those are some key points you made, Commissioner Talon, others. So we have met with the sheriff. We've had a very good discourse with Michelle Young, and we are pulling in additional departments to kind of look at this from a county-wide perspective to identify how we might deal with some of the issues that are happening on the ground. We've identified individuals in the community that maybe would be willing to sit down with us and have a civil discourse around the issue. We will attempt to do that again. That's what we're planning to do. We had a very good meeting with staff, including our Cultural Insight Council lead and Michelle Young. So we've also made contact with a few individuals in the community that are interested in sitting down with us and having that kind of discourse. So hopefully we'll pull something together here in the next week or two so that, to meet your deadline. But to deal with this in a way that's effective, that really identified what are the issues that we can have control over, influence over, in a way that produces results, which is what Commissioner Womack mentioned earlier. So that's where we're headed with this, and just be patient. We'll be meeting again with staff here soon, so be patient, and we'll report back to the chair, of course, and keep this thing moving forward.
Thank you, Administrator Britt. So that gives you a little background on what we have been working on in that area. That's all I have. We move then to agenda item number 12, and for that I call on Commissioner Melton.
I move to adjourn, subject to the call of the chair, until Thursday, November 29, 2018, at 8:30.
It's been supported. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. We are adjourned.